The presents have been opened, the turkeys have been consumed, the Christmas movies have been binged, and if you were in our house, it would have been a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies, though I don't know if I should admit that or not. The silent night, the excited morning has come and gone. Christmas is over. Begs the question, so what now? There will be some who stay busy with the Boxing Day, Boxing Week sales. A good opportunity to spend that cash that Grandma gave you for Christmas, or those gift cards that Uncle Steve got you. Others will stay alert with the hope of the new year to come. Yet it isn't likely that these things, that Boxing Day sales or even New Year's celebrations, it isn't likely that these things will last all that long either. And if we are really honest, though the new year will hopefully bring about a new mindset, it may also bring about new challenges, or at the very least, new reminders of the same old challenges. For many, besides a new calendar on the wall, not much will change. Christmas is over. So now what? Well, actually, Christmas isn't technically over. For those keen churchgoers, they will celebrate Christmas for 12 days, the 12 days of Christmas. They'll celebrate this period of 12 days. It's the period after Jesus' birth on the 25th and before what we call the Epiphany on January 6th. The Epiphany is where the Magi, or the wise men, or the kings, whatever you want to call them, when they visited the baby Jesus and gave him the gifts for a king. I don't know how historically accurate these dates are, or the period in between these dates, but I do really like the idea of extending the Christmas celebrations. And this idea of extending Christmas, it's actually spread to our secular world around us as well, hasn't it? I'm thinking especially of that odd yet wonderful song, The 12 Days of Christmas. Christmas trees and decorations may remain up, and for some, the gifts will stay under the tree until January 6th as reminders of how grateful we should be for the good gifts around us. I really like this idea of extending the true good news of Christmas. And not just because I really like Christmas lights and Christmas trees and decorations, and I also really like prolonging the work necessary to take those things down. But the real reason I like extending Christmas is I like extending the celebrations that God would enter into our world, that God himself would embrace and even use the mundaneness of regular life. That's worth celebrating for at least more than a day. This week, at least in our household, we've kind of gone back to our regular routines of life. We wake up early in the morning, go to work, we prepare, we eat fairly standard meals. But Christmas reminds us that it is in these standard rhythms that God came to dwell with us. Nowhere is this revelation more clear or more evident than in the birth of Jesus himself. The incarnation is shockingly domestic when you think about it. When God came to earth, he didn't place himself in a palace, but instead he placed himself in a family. It is there, in the confines of parents and later siblings, unnoticed by the whole world, that the new creation begins. So, what if Christmas is not the exception? What if Christmas is the rule? What if Christmas is not just something to be celebrated one time? What if it is instead embracing the reality that God has come among us? Christmas is the rule, not the exception. God entering into our world and engaging with us on our own terms, using ordinary created things to bless us, to minister to us, to save us. Our ordinary humanity, our regular rhythms of life, this is the exact place where God himself chose to meet us. We have to understand Jesus' birth as powerful and beautiful, and purposeful, of course, but I think we also must understand it as fairly ordinary. When we do, Christmas can no longer be seen as a temporary one-time mission where Christ stooped down to take our feeble flesh in order to get a job done. Instead, Christmas is actually a stunning picture of what we were designed for: communion, relationship with God Himself. This is God's final blessing upon His creation, that He would come to dwell in it, even in the mundaneness of it all. God's loving presence breaks into our midst, the midst of our normal daily lives. This began in Bethlehem in a manger, and it continues as Jesus was launched into 30 years of hiddenness, of nothing, really. Have you ever thought about how we know a lot about Jesus' birth, we know a lot about the final 3-ish years of His life, but there's a 30-ish time span that we don't know too much about Jesus? I don't think this is because that time period wasn't important, but I do think that this time period was fairly normal. Jesus grew up, He cried, He laughed, He made friends, He played, He learned, He worked, He became a carpenter. These things are all important, but they are fairly regular for 30 years. This is the true good news of Christmas, I think. And I like the idea of celebrating this news, celebrating that God came to dwell with us, and God came to dwell in our regular life and regular routines. I think that this is worth celebrating for at the very least 12 days, right? One of my favorite Christmas movies is Elf. The movie with Will Ferrell. It's a funny movie. It's a great movie. And in this movie, the first rule of the Code of Elves is to treat every day like Christmas. Treat every day like Christmas. I think this is a great rule for elves, but I also think it's a great rule for us. I love this idea that not just for one day, not even just for 12 days, but every day we treat like Christmas. We treat with an eagerness and anticipation that God Himself will break into our regular, normal, mundane lives and do something extraordinary. That God Himself will come amongst the ordinary to do something extraordinary. Now, I don't really have New Year's resolutions, but if I did, my New Year's resolution for 2021 would be this: to treat every day like Christmas. To be on guard, to be excited, to be aware of God breaking in to the normal rhythms and routines of life and doing something special. This would be my New Year's resolution: treat every day like Christmas. Perhaps you'll join me in this adventure. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, friends.